Well, hello, and I'd like to introduce you to Doug Neal here, who is band school's trombone teacher and will be teaching the trombone on the band musicianship course. So we're going to have a chat with Doug today, specifically about making the transition from the world of brass band or classical to the world that we occupy, which is jazz, popular music, big bands, and all that stuff. All that jazz, I was going to say. So yeah, we're just going to have a chat about it. It might interest anybody, but particularly those who play trombones or brass and are looking to join that world, join our course even. So Doug will give you a little bit of insight because he has made that transition himself from brass bands originally to this world. So let's see what he's got to say for himself. So, hello, Doug.
Hello, Andy.
So, first of all, then, how difficult is that transition to make? Do you think, from that one, the classical world or brass band world to this world? Is it a big transition?
Well, for me, it was quite a big transition because I was immersed in, shall we say, straight against swung styles. I was immersed in that till I was really in my 30s, from like a young child.
Yes.
So it took a lot of undoing and sort of like re-educating myself.
Yeah. When you say undoing, what was it that had to be undone? Was it just an unfortunate way you'd been taught, or was it something that was intrinsic to brass bands that had to be undone? What exactly had to be undone?
Well, I think it was a combination of both, to be honest.
Right.
A lot of, shall we say, unfortunate ways of me being educated about how to play in brass bands. Like I always remember, one of the first lessons I had was, it's like you're spitting down the instrument. And I never quite understood, because when I tried to spit down the instrument, there was nothing coming out. But eventually, I sort of got it, and now understanding the mechanics of brass playing, I get what I was being tried, what these people were trying to get me to do.
Yes. Yeah.
But and I always hear me dad in the background when I was practicing, tongue your notes, lad, tongue your notes, lad. But that's all he would say. But he wouldn't say, well, how to tongue your notes, or what I was doing wrong with tonguing my notes.
Was he a brass player himself then?
Yeah, I come from a family of brass players, mainly trombone players.
From the northeast, like.
From the northeast, like. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that already gives you some credibility.
So it was. I was brought up Salvation Army brass band.
Right. Yeah.
And it was frowned on to be playing out in colliery bands, they used to call them. So I spent 18 years. Well, I was 18 when I left the Salvation Army.
Yeah.
But then I joined the military army.
Yeah.
I played in military bands, which just emphasises the propagates the 1 2 3 4 1 2 3
very
4.
straight laced.
Very straight, and I'm sure it's got not equidistance. It was something to do about when you're playing quavers, it's dun 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 dun, and everything's got the same values.
Military values.
yeah. Of course, military, but brass bands are the same. It's like emphasis on 1 and 3.
Yeah.
And the name, the posh name for when you split the crotchet, the quavers. Each quaver has to be of the same length.
Sure. Yeah.
But now it's the emphasis is on 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. And so you've got the emphasis is on the different beats, and there's also it's called swing, and some people think it's 6/8, but it's not.
Uh-huh.
It depends. The swing is depending. How much you swing is dependent on how fast the music goes. So the faster the
that's
music
true.
goes, the less obvious the swing is.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. So
So do you agree that it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing? Then are you getting behind Louis Armstrong with that slogan there?
yeah, I started playing music. This is very particular. That I noticed that when I was playing in this band, it wasn't jazz; it was ska. But people were getting up and they were dancing to music that I was creating.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of people getting up to dance. And a ska is in one sense, you could probably say it's a little bit in between swing and straight. But I think it's much easier to dance to something that's got a swing to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Than 1, 2, 3, 4, which in my head is like a marching thing.
Mm-hmm.
And marching and dancing have commonalities.
Yes. Although you march to war, you don't dance to war.
Exactly. But I prefer.
Although that could be a new trend, all future wars could be danced to, couldn't they? You dance your way across the battlefield. No, anyway.
Well, it was always by the left, quick march, ting 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 ting. Or as my colleague in the army, he always said, by the left, quick march, shall we? And he always used to have this thing. I mean, it was always a joke. It was never like when it was like a serious thing. Shall we? Yes, we shall. And that, even if you say it, it's got a lilt to it, a swingy sort of. Shall.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Left, right. Yeah. So I prefer the swung music, and it makes me feel like I can dance to it rather than the military music,
sure.
which you can march to.
It's putting you in the mood for dancing rather than going to war, as you say. But how would you teach swing then, that feel, to those who are uninitiated into that world? How are you going to teach it? Is it just a matter of getting them used to the feel of it, or do you explain it in mathematical terms, or how would you do it?
Well, again, it's a bit of both.
Right.
Because if you don't understand what you're doing in the first place, sounds all right. But I was trying to do how I would have interpreted what I'm going to play now, how I would have interpreted before I got into like the swingy sort of thing.
That sounds like jazz, yeah.
So it's got more. There's more syncopation, more complex rhythms in jazz.
Yeah, that's true.
And
good word, syncopation. We'll use that again.
And understanding like the harmonics, like the harmonic theory of music helps understanding jazz. Whereas this is the other thing, when brass bands, military bands, for me, pre 40 years old, because I went to university late, music you read music off a sheet of music, and to me that was music. Until one day when I was at uni, and my tutor said, "What's music?" I said, "There, that's music here on the bit of on the bit of paper." He said, "No, that's ink on paper. That's not music. Music is a disturbance of the airwaves that your ears pick up. Now that's music." And from then on, it was just like a different sort of.
Right.
It was a fundamental change in my attitude towards what music is.
That's quite a moot point, isn't it? Because clearly in the brass and classical worlds, they learn to play what's written in front of them more than in any other genres, perhaps.
Yeah.
Certainly in those genres, they do. They don't steer away from it, do they? Too much.
Well, yeah. And the word I was looking for earlier is metronomical exactitude.
Well, of course,
which
yes.
is a big word. and the funny thing is, with jazz, you have to learn things with a metronome, so you're not wavering from the pulse, because the pulse and the strict tempo is something fundamental to jazz.
Yeah.
Whereas you have there's rubato. There's an Italian word for you. Where the tempo's played around with,
yes,
to give emotion and feeling into the music. But in jazz, if you can't keep the pulse, then you're not doing jazz. Once you understand where the pulse is, you can play around with it using syncopation and called pushing notes and things like that.
Are you saying that playing to the pulse is more important in jazz than it is in these other worlds?
I wouldn't say playing to the pulse, but understanding and having the pulse like internalized.
Okay.
And it's like the metronome is going on inside you, the pulse, the swing, because you've got the pulse, but within the pulse you've got swing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that internalized, then you can't play as a group. Basically, because in a brass band everybody's playing to the pulse.
Yeah.
But they're playing with metronomical exactitude, which you don't do in jazz. So and when you're playing, like every instrument has their part to play. So you've got the engine, which is the rhythm section, bass and drums, drum and bass as it's called now. But that's fundamental. So the bass will be laying down the it's called generally walking bass. Dum, 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 dum.
Yep.
So that's on the pulse, but the drums will be giving the swing feeling. They'll be splitting up that pulse.
Yeah, because you wouldn't get that from the walking bass line itself unless it's throwing in a few doon 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 doo doo da da.
But you've got to understand and be together on where the swing is and what the swing is. If you don't have that, then it all falls apart and doesn't sound very good. But when everybody's on it, man, that's cooking.
All right. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that not all jazz is about swing. You can argue with that point, but you know, we'll not go into the semantics of jazz too much because we could argue all day, and there's probably been lots of books written about it. But in my mind, jazz has been around for 100 years and more than that. That term has been used, and it represents a lot of things. And swing was, harks back to a period in which jazz was popular. It was danced to. It was the mainstream popular music at the time, and swing was what it was all about. And that's, of course, when Louis Armstrong was around as well. The big bands, that was the original big bands playing swing music. But if you bring it forward a bit to, I don't know, from the beyond that, because that's still swing. There's a swing feel inherent in that.
Very, very fast swing.
But I'm thinking about where jazz went from the 70s. It went into fusion, jazz rock. And so I don't think
Latin
Well, yes, the Latin
Latin jazz.
influence as well. So I wouldn't say it's all about swing, but certainly anyone who wants to play jazz has to understand the swing feel, and not a lot of things are interpreted
yeah,
that way with the swing feel.
One main difference between straight classical brass band world to jazz is the improvisation side of things.
Yeah. Well, before you get to that point, I'm definitely going to raise that with you in a minute. Something that a point I'm sure that you'll agree with, or maybe you can elaborate on it. Talking about keeping to the beat before. Perhaps one big difference between the brass and classical world and jazz big band is that in the jazz big band world, generally speaking, you're not watching a conductor keeping time for you. You're listening to the drummer. The drummer is the thing. Whereas in the brass band and classical world, you don't have a drummer as a matter of course. You've got a conductor keeping the beat, and you're watching him. So, I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I was brought up with the conductor in the middle, so to me, it was essential, and I'm saying was until I was woken up to the idea of that I've said it before. It's like an internalisation that you should be able to hear the engine room, the bass and drums internalised going along inside your head, and you're playing to that. But when you're actually playing with a bass and a drummer, it's there for you, and it's two less things to think about. But they are the conductor.
Yeah,
Keeping the beat, keeping the rhythm, keeping the groove, and you play to them.
yeah,
You know, they provide the swing, they provide the tempo.
yes, yes.
And if you don't play the swing and the tempo that's there laid down for you,
Yeah,
then it doesn't sound very good.
yeah, absolutely. So I think any brass bander or classical player looking to join our course and enter the world of jazz and popular music and big band, if they don't have any background in that, then that might come as a shock to them that they have to listen to the drummer and the bassist, because that's the rhythm section, as Doug has pointed out, the engine room, not being guided by a conductor. Mostly there isn't a conductor. Maybe a band leader who directs a little bit, but no, it's the drums and the bass that lay it down. And in our world, most music has a steady beat to it, doesn't it? It doesn't change.
Very rarely change.
You don't need a conductor.
You might get like double tempo, half tempo.
Or you get ritordandos at the end, or you might get a pause, or a fermetta, and the music has to be brought off by the band leader. But a lot of it's pretty consistent, and so you listen to the drummer, and if the drummer doesn't know their stuff, then God help us all. But they get the sack, I think.
The engine needs an overhaul then.
Yes. Now, okay, let's talk about. I suppose before we go into improvisation, I suppose in a way we're alluding to maybe a somewhat antiquated and stereotypical vision of brass banders and classical people, because I think now it might be fair to say, certainly among younger people, that those divisions, those musical divisions, aren't as pronounced as they once were. I'm just thinking of conservatories, for example, who now. Their students are introduced to all kinds of genres, not just one specific genre. And so they're much more rounded in their education. So, so maybe the brass banders that join us, or the classical people, already know one or two things about the world we're talking about today, which is great. That means that their learning curve has just flattened out a little bit for them. But let's talk about improvisation now, because that's obviously a key element in all this. So what are your thoughts on all that then?
I'm on a journey, which you might hear a lot in the jazz world, musicians world. I'm on a journey, and a journey of learning, self-improvement, So improvisation was something I'm just starting to get an angle on. I pursued that for a long time, but I've started understanding that whereas I used to think improvisation was happening on the spot every time. It was just coming from the person.
Just making it up,
Just
off
making,
the cuff.
just making it up. It's coming off the cuff, and it's
Yeah.
something you had the gift or you worked at it. And now I'm starting to understand the process of being able to improvise, and it comes. There's more steps to it than you can't improvise. Then you can improvise.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I'm starting to understand the first step is that you start learning solos, certainly by the greats. And you learn about phrasing, you learn the words eluding me, short little
Licks, phrases,
licks,
licks. That's
licks
the
and phrases.
guitarist's term,
Licks,
but
licks and phrases, and then after a while of learning and having an arsenal, ammunition belt, if you like, you can then fire away your licks and phrases that you learned.
fire at will.
But then after a while, once you've developed your language, and it's down to the language of jazz. Once you've developed your language, and you can start telling stories in the language of jazz, then you don't really need the prescribed solo as much.
Yeah.
You can then develop the language and start speaking.
You've got your own wings. You can fly a bit.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the word language. I mean, I use it a lot too, because I believe in this context of improvising that you need to learn a language, if not more than one language, in order to improvise. It isn't just spontaneous make up whatever you feel like doing. You know, it's not quite like that, is it? It is about, well, usually, shall we say, it's working within certain parameters. Yeah. As defined by a style that you're alluding to. So if it's jazz, you need to know a bit about the jazz language. You need to know the things that make it up in order to regurgitate it. Yeah. You're not starting from scratch.
Just because you understand the language of jazz, if you wanted to play Latin jazz, you would have to understand the language that Latin jazz and the parameters surrounding Latin jazz. You have to understand that in order to play that particular genre.
And this course can cover a number of different genres. That's the intention. Whilst it might be fair to say it's going to be jazz based, but not exclusively, and the aim should always be to create stylistic awareness in other genres. So we, of course, Latin, definitely, that's a big component as well, and funk and fusion and even blues, rock and roll, reggae, soul, rhythm and blues, as we originally understand the term.
And you like ballads. You can take music that's very, very straight and apply the parameters of the genre that you want to work it in. Yeah. So you have the word you used before, fusion. Yep. You can have rock jazz fusion, Latin jazz fusion.
Yep.
Ballad jazz fusion,
just by taking characteristics of these styles, blending them together, and there you go. Yeah, I mean that's all within the scope of the course, and it should be. Okay, so you're right. You have to absorb a language. You have to learn it, and you have to learn solos, learn how others have done it in that genre. Oh, can you think of any players that you would highly recommend any prospective students to listen to?
Well, to follow. The guy that I really first listened to, the guy that got me in awe of somebody playing the trombone like I've never been in awe of before. He's an English guy called Mark Nightingale.
Okay.
And I remember I was stood next to him. It was on a course, and he said, "Oh, so do you know all your major scales?" "Yeah." "All your minors?" "Yeah." "All your arpeggios?" "Oh, yeah." "Can you do them in one breath?" "Huh?" And I was gobsmacked, and it took a few seconds, and I said, "Well, can you?" And he said, "Of course I can. I wouldn't want to ask you to do something that I couldn't do myself."
Yes, yeah.
So I said, "Well, show me." And he picked his trombone up and took one breath, and he played all 12 majors, all 12 minors with arpeggios in one breath without a mistake. And then he put his trombone down. He wasn't even out of breath. I can't do that, so don't ask me to do that. But that was that just again, it was a life-changing thing. That was something that made me want to go to university and learn.
Okay.
Get government paid lessons.
So that's Mark Nightingale. I'll be honest in saying I've not heard of Mark.
Yeah.
So sorry if you're listening to this, Mark.
Yeah.
I've not heard of you. But can you think of
So-
any
so
well-known, really
people,
well-known players?
probably the most prolific guy, and he was the one that changed the slide trombone, and people will still argue that he never played slide. It must have been valves because he was so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy called J.J. Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Delfio Marsalis. You might know Wynton
Mm-hmm.
Marsalis, but
Yeah.
Delfio is the trombone playing guy from that family.
Okay.
There's also early 60s came to the fore, Curtis Fuller,
Mm-hmm.
Kai Winding, Carl Fontana.
Yeah, heard of him.
I could name quite a few, but I'm very poor at
There's a guy that
remembering
you've
names.
mentioned to me before. What's his name? Teagarden?
Oh, Jack Teagarden.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a pioneer, but in like 20s, 30s, and he was still going in the 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
But he was he would play. Whereas you hear jazz now, and you think of a tune, and it's very, very different from the original tune when you play the head, and then it's improvised, and the improvisation often is nowhere like the tune.
Mm.
But early proponents of jazz used to they take the melody line and just change it up, just
Yep.
subtly change it up a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
that was Jack Teagarden, and he was renowned for a dark sounding, but melodic, tuneful way of playing
So-
jazz.
So let me pick you up on that point there. That you were saying Teagarden was an exemplar of this approach to improvising,
Yeah.
of taking the tune and just
Tweaking
it, as you say. And is that how you would be teaching your students to, or introducing them to improvising? On the trombone.
Well, I again, it would be a process of here's the tune. So you would have a head. The tune is called a head in jazz parlance.
Yep.
So you'd have the head, and to start with, you'd play the head to a backing track or a live
Yeah.
rhythm section.
Sure.
So you'd understand how to play the head in a particular way, and then you would start to play around with the head,
Mm-hmm.
with the tune a little bit, and so you'd start moving away from how the tune is played or is written down,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it will start not sounding like the tune
Mm-hmm.
originally, but harmonically you would generally hear the harmonic progress
Yeah. Yeah.
of the tune
Yeah.
by the way that you
The notes you choose.
choose and play your
Yes,
improvisation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say that sums up the history of jazz improvisation. That it started out the way you described,
Yeah.
and certainly by post-war, a whole new approach with bebop and so on, and chord scale theory, folks. Chord scale theory. So you take the harmonic changes as your start point, and you consider what scales you can play over those chords, and you build something from that, which has no resemblance to the original tune. But that can be very off-putting for newcomers to improvisation. The idea they have to learn lots of scales and then learn how to manipulate them to create something that sounds musical. And I think the approach that you're suggesting is a good one for beginners.
Personally, because of my poor memory, I approach things. It's a bit of one and a bit of the other, and it's so I understand a little bit about the scale and chord theory, but what I do is something I've learned later on in life is to use my ears and does it sound good? And if it sounds good, then it must be good.
Yeah.
Because that's the premise.
Do you in doing that, are you playing the note first, deciding whether it sounds good, and if it doesn't, changing it, or have you got a preconceived idea as to what, you know, how what point?
Again, it's a bit of both in the sense that because I'm not a prolific improviser in the sense of it's coming straight out of me. I like to be prepared and have prepared solos. But if you're moving away from the prepared solo, if you like, and it's a saying in jazz: if you make a mistake again, then it isn't a mistake anymore. It's something that you've intended to do.
That's not advice that we will be generally putting out there, folks. That's a sort of in-house joke, that one.
Yeah.
Amongst jazzers.
So it's sometimes you've got the scale notes, the chordal notes, but you have blue notes, which you could call them passing notes as well, and they're not part of the chord, not part of the scale, but they move from one note. They get you from one note to the other, and it's like if I've got the parcel and I want to give it to you, then I will pass the parcel to you.
Yeah.
And that's like the passing note. It's like I'm part of the
It's a short distance.
Yeah. Short distance. You don't really hear it too much.
And you don't spend time on it, or can you?
If you spend time on it, you know that it's being passed. It's like pass the parcel. There, you've got the parcel.
Right. It's
dead quick. But you have to. Sometimes you have to do that.
Swift, mean, and lean, or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But again, it's a case of like exploring to understand not just what notes sound good, but what effect does each note that if you're playing a chord, you can play a number of notes and some will sound in and some will sound out, consonance and dissonance. So it's like consonance is when it's sounding perfect and sweet, and dissonance is when it's sounding what's going on. But there's a whole range of in between consonance and dissonance, and it's being able to utilize those sounds in between.
Yeah. Do you think it helps to have a theoretical understanding as to why some notes are consonant sounding and others sound dissonant against a particular chord? Does that help, or can you get away with not knowing?
It can certainly be helpful.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would say that understanding why notes are dissonant and why notes are consonant is very helpful. And also experimenting, you get experience of which notes sound good.
Yeah.
And good as in sometimes it's a meaty, crunchy sound you want. So you're moving towards the dissonant sound, or you move towards the sweet sound of consonants. Okay,
but it's being in a position to make those kind of choices.
Yeah, for definite.
You mentioned a word before. Oh, what was the word? Oh, gone right out of my head now. Oh, something I was going to pick you up on. Oh, do you know, it's just gone out of my head. Never mind, it'll come back
It'll
to
come
me.
back, there's a bit to be edited.
Cut! Possibly. Um, yeah, no, I can't think what it was now I was going to say. Oh, I know what it is. That's just come back to me now. Yeah, you mentioned licks before. Licks.
Yeah.
And are you going to be teaching your students licks? Is this part of your approach?
Yeah. Techniques and licks. Techniques techniques are ways of playing notes or effects, but licks are like say maybe 2 bars, a 2-bar phrase that you can play over different chords, and you change where change the pitch depending on which chord you're playing, but it's the same sort of up and down sequence, and sort of so they are licks. Licks and phrases as against articulations, which you'll learn about, and
I think we're going to do a video on articulations, aren't we?
Yeah, it'll be
later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so any brass band or a classical person who happens to not have much background in what we're talking about shouldn't be put off from joining, because, well, we want to appeal to those people, and the message is that it's not a huge shock to the system. You know, you can cope with it, and with somebody like Doug, he knows about your background, and he'll gently ease you into this new genre with his guidance. And
you'll get great pleasure from playing.
Yeah.
In certainly in the big band format the course will provide.
Well, that's right. I was going to just talk about
a small combo actually.
Well, that's right, because of course we're focused on 2 formats: the combo format, which is a smaller unit, and big band. But let's talk about big band now, specifically big band. By the way, I don't know about you, but there are certain words that have connotations, perhaps unfortunate connotations, because they conjure up a certain thing, and that's maybe not what was intended. And I think big band is one of those terms in that it might be confused with swing music, which was a period of time. It was the 1930s into the 40s. Yeah. But really, on the face of it, a big band is just a big band.
Yeah, big band's describing it involves quite a number of personnel.
Well, yes. I mean, in fact, there's 2 ways of looking at that, just in terms of lineup. One is that it's just a big band. It could be any kind of band. You could have banjos in it, but although we don't. Ours does allude to a big band format as it's traditionally conceived, but it doesn't mean we're playing a specific type of music. And I think that's an important point, really, that big band as a term does not presuppose a style of music. It's simply a format, and it alludes to a certain size of ensemble.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't say enough that we are using that format to explore popular music, of which jazz is a vital component, though. But let's talk about the big band format then, at least, Doug. So, from your point of view, you are the trombone leader. You were playing the first trombone, the lead trombone.
Yeah.
How is it going to be for people who don't have a background in this? What are they going to expect playing as part of a section in a big band as a trombone player?
Certainly there'll be. If you're from a brass band, then you will have played in sections before, and you'll know about listening to each other.
Yeah.
And that's a core fundamental. But it's stylistically, you'll notice differences. You may be playing a lot higher than than you're used to. You might be playing a lot lower than you're used to. As lead, first trombone tends to be a lot higher than fourth or fifth trombone. There's 5 in the section, but bass trombone, they're covering like the low notes and big fat notes.
Yeah. Is it fair to say, just to interject there, that in the brass band world the trombones read the treble clef, but in this world they read the bass clef? So that might be an awkward transition for some to make, but one they'd have to take. They'd have to make that transition to reading the bass clef.
But funnily enough, in brass bands, the bass trombone is written in bass clef for some reason.
Okay.
So if you're a the bass trombone player, you're already familiar with reading bass clef.
Well, that's good.
But it's just another system that when you apply yourself, you get to know it, and if you apply yourself a lot, then you'll quickly learn bass clef. Phrasing is something that will be different, and like I said before, some articulations, but there'll be another video on articulations.
So yes, they may have to make this transition, but you're suggesting it's not such a painful maneuver. But will you be helping the students to learn to read for the bass clef, making that transition? Have you got any plan there, or throw them a book and tell them to get on with it?
Well, it'll be, again, like everything, will be a bit of both. You know, I'll be there guiding the students in the best way I think is pertinent to that particular student. But obviously, if the student doesn't put the work in, there's going to be a slow process. But if the student puts the work in, that can be quite an exciting, quick process of learning new skills.
Talking about putting things into, putting in the hours. What do you imagine would be the requirement from the trombone students who want to do the course and try and achieve the aims and objectives that we're laying down? How much are they going to have to practice in their own time?
Well, I think that 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day.
2 hours a day.
Wow.
Certainly.
Don't be put off by that.
well, it's you've got a lot. There's a lot to learn, and like I say, if you don't put an hour and a half bare minimum, I think, and you've got to be trying to be doing it every day. Just so it can become second nature to what you do. You don't have to think it. Once you've learned it and it's internalized, you don't have to be thinking about it too much. It comes out naturally, and that's where you want to be.
Okay, so what about students that are listening to you there and thinking, oh my goodness, I can't possibly manage an hour and a half to 2 hours a day because I've got this and I've got that and the other. Would less than that be acceptable, do you think?
Well, if the time, some people are quicker at learning, some people have more natural ability for certain things.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about from my point of view and what I want out of what I do. So it depends what the student wants out of the course and what they want out of their trombone playing. If say you do an hour a day and you start to see improvements, results and improvements, and satisfaction from the results and improvements that you see, then 1 hour is obviously making headway. So the whole point is through the practice, and that is you want to be continually improving what you do, and progress and keep progressing.
Will you be advising the students on a practice plan, how they should use what precious time they've got between course dates to steer them in the right direction? You'll be helping them with that, telling them exactly what they have to practice. I suppose it depends on where the student's at to start with, because it might be different from one student to the next.
I think every student would have to have a tailored program. Not think, but will. Most definitely, every student will be at a different point in their journey, and also have different needs of learning.
So you'll be assessing all that at some point. I mean, I think we've agreed that we're going to try and assess students as they apply. We'll try and assess them before we offer them a place, in fact, because we need to know where you're coming from, whether it's a guitar student or a trombone student or anything else. So whether we're going to do that on Zoom with them or some method of assessment, just to see first of all, whether they're able to actually successfully
Yeah,
join us,
yeah.
or and if
Yeah.
they are, then what kind of prescription we're going to offer
Yeah,
them
because
individually, because it'll be different.
we're not here to teach people how to play their instruments as in beginners.
Oh no,
We
we
need
can't have that.
people who can play their instruments to a reasonable level. Say grade 6, I think we were saying, or grade 5-ish, or maybe even grade 4.
Yeah.
But some level of competence and ability to start with.
Enough technical ability.
Yeah,
I think that's the
yeah.
start point, isn't it? Sheer technical ability. That's the start point, really. And because we can't teach that on the course, we can't cater for individuals in that way. If the applicants want a little bit of support outside the course, then they'll be offered discounted lessons from all of us.
Yeah.
So that's 1-to-1. Whether it's an online arrangement or offline, but that will be there for them as individuals. But yeah, the whole course does presuppose enough technical ability. But that's not to suggest that they've done grades, is it? Because we're not just looking for people who've got grades.
We're not after grades. It's like
that's just a kind of benchmark.
Can you play the instrument, or
yes,
can you not?
That's it.
And yeah. So it's like, don't be put off by any like words you use, preconceived expectations of what we want. We want people on the course. We want to teach people. We want to allow people to learn new experiences and progress on their instruments in music.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, so what else can we discuss before we sign off? Anything else?
I think we've talked a lot.
Far too much.
Yeah, probably. And this half hour will probably end up as 20 minutes or 10 minutes.
Who knows how it may end up being edited? But we're just giving you a taste of what we're looking to do, what the course will entail. And like I'll say it again, we're looking to appeal to all kinds of people, but especially people who are making this transition, who play a trombone. Well, if we're talking horn players anyway, making a transition from one world to possibly another world for them, an alien world possibly, and guiding them along so that they can take part in concerts as well. That's a big feature of it, isn't it? So we'll be having the concerts as well. So and the time is now. I've said this before already in another video, but I'll say it again, that the time is now to fill in an application form. And the application form itself doesn't guarantee you a place. You're simply making an application, which we will then consider, and we'll have to get back to you to assess where you're at with things and whether you're suitable or not. We will then offer you a place, and then it's your decision as to whether you accept it or not. So there's two parts of this process, but the time is now to get your applications in, and you can get them on our site, bandskool.com, bandskool.com. Go to, it's a menu option, Band School Course 2021. Underneath there, I think it's the first one underneath, it's application form. And that's the first thing to do, is to fill that in and send it back. You're also welcome to contact us if you've got any questions. We'll gladly answer any questions you got before you even do that, if you want. So it's info@bandschool.com. But yeah, certainly the time is now to register your interest. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to this, and we're going to stay tuned for some more videos with Doug. He's going to demonstrate some techniques which are pertinent to jazz and popular music, and he may even demonstrate some of the tunes in the first term repertoire. Okay, see you for now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.